I have 2 degrees and I don't work with either of them. I have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in business. When I was in university, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist, so I was getting my bachelor's in psychology. But the psychology program I was doing required a minor, and so my minor was business management. And I realized halfway through getting my psychology degree that if I didn't want to be a psychologist, I wasn't going to be able to use my psychology degree for anything. Um, I realized that I really needed to continue on and get a master's and a doctorate degree, and didn't really want to do that. I didn't really have the money for that, and there was no programs in the state I lived. So my only option was to do student loans, and that was something that I did not want to do. What I found when I was doing my business classes was I really enjoyed it. I felt like my business classes were different from my psychology classes, and that I almost felt like I could be more of myself in the business classes, which is strange, as we'll come to find in this story. But yeah, so I kept doing more business classes, and I got to a point where I felt like I actually wanted to switch and do marketing. I felt like I could use some of my psychology that I learned and some of the business that I enjoyed and really combine these two into one degree or career. And so at the time, I went to a professor that I really trusted, and I explained to her kind of how I was thinking. She was one of my business professors, and she looked at all my classes and she realized that I was only 2 classes away from qualifying for the MBA program at my university. And so I spent 1 semester doing those 2, and I ended up doing my MBA. I kind of had this like moment of, I don't know, I guess I was just unsure of if I was making the right decision or not. But I didn't really have anybody in my life to really ask. I didn't know anyone working as a marketer or working in business, really. I was really kind of pioneering my own way. So I chose to do the MBA program. And just like with my bachelor's degree, I wanted to finish as quickly as I could because I felt behind. I've always kind of felt like that in my life. That's kind of been a theme, and university was another time where I felt like, okay, I'm behind. I want to quickly finish my bachelor's degree as fast as possible. And then I want to finish my master's degree as quick as possible because at the time when I started university, I was 20 and 21. And looking back, that's really not that old, but all of my peers were 17 and 18, so I was older than everyone. So what I did was just load up on classes. I took as many classes as I could, and I did summer courses. And so I never took a break for 3 years to finish my bachelor's, and then I never took a break to finish my master's degree. And I finished both in, I believe, 4 years, and it should take 6. And so after graduating, I was like super excited to start working in marketing. But what I quickly found is that even what's happening today is everyone was requiring so much experience for entry-level positions. And not only that, they, at least at the time, were expecting these amazing portfolios. And I was like, well, I just graduated. Like, I don't have real-world experience. I'm just now playing around with Adobe Suite. So my portfolio was like not that great. And so I applied to jobs and I wasn't getting any results. And so I decided to start applying to more kind of businessy, like more MBA focused, like finance and manager positions. And so I remember applying to Enterprise. It's a rental car service in the US. And I got to the 3rd round of interviews. So it was a very long interview process. And the 3rd round of interview was with the branch manager. And it was very awkward. That's one of the most awkward interviews I've ever done in my life because he was like, in the beginning of the interview, he was very like just stone, kind of like he didn't show any emotion. So he would ask me a question about my experience or something, and I would be answering the question. And when I finished, he would just like sit and not say anything. And so I thought, okay, maybe I missed something in explaining that story. So maybe I should say something else. And so I would kind of give a little bit more detail, kind of reiterate myself. And again, he would just kind of sit there. And then near the end of the interview, he was like just sitting, writing. So I would be answering a question and he's just like writing notes, looking down, and wouldn't even look at me. And that's the most awkward, uncomfortable interview I've ever been in, because I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, how am I supposed to connect with you when you just stare at me or you stare at a piece of paper? But that was kind of like my first insight into kind of what the corporate world was outside of business. I then had another interview. It was with United Health, and they were specifically looking for MBA graduates, and they made it seem like you were going to be a manager for when you worked there. So I went to the interview, and it became clear quite quickly that it was not for managers. It was a sales position to sell insurance. And I remember, and this should have been the red flag at the time, that I did this personality test with the manager, and he looked at my results and he was like, oh yeah, these two scores are kind of low, but we can work on that. Now, when I look back, that's like a clear indication that who I am as a person and my personality was not so well suited for the very extroverted corporate America. But at the time, I didn't want to accept that. I kind of had this inkling that, like, okay, I'm very introverted, but it had been something that I pushed myself to work on. I really tried to make myself go out of my way to, I'm getting emotional. Ugh. I did not think I would get emotional in this video. Wow. Okay. I really pushed myself to be someone I wasn't, because I really wanted to be this like businesswoman. And I'm not even sure where that comes from, because like I said, nobody in my family is like this businesswoman. And maybe that's why. Maybe I wanted to be the first, like, the strong, independent woman. Sorry. But moving on from that, that was my first indication that, okay, maybe this business degree is not really for me. But I had just finished, like I literally had just graduated, and I was fighting these thoughts of like, oh, I can do this. So the kind of the last thing that happened was I had an interview at Stevens. And I was just, the night before, I was like experiencing so much anxiety because, again, I just felt like a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not really what these people are looking for. Like, I'm not, like, yeah, I enjoy talking to people, but it's kind of like on my own terms. And I kind of have like a social battery. And so I knew that about myself. I just hadn't accepted it. And so the night before, I just had so much anxiety, and I emailed her that night, and I remember getting her response on Monday morning, and she was like super upset. It was a very rude response back to me. But from that point, I stopped applying to jobs, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's a better way for me. Like, maybe I have other options within myself that I can try out. So I started doing social media marketing for myself. And then I reached out to local companies in my area, and I started doing their social media. And then I started learning Adobe Suite even more. And I was doing content creation and learning brand strategy and doing all these things. And so I had started my own company, basically. It was just me, but I had started my own company. And so I started providing these services, working with these small brands. And that was fun for a little while. It got kind of what happened was Facebook bought Instagram. And when they did that, they took away all the ways that you could organically grow on Instagram because they wanted you to pay to grow. And so I had marketed myself as being, I will help you organically grow your brand. And this is exactly how I will do it. And I will teach you how to do it so that I'm only here for a short while. I will pass off my knowledge to you, and then I'll kind of continue on unless you want me to continue managing your brand for you. So when Facebook came in and bought Instagram, that kind of hurt me really bad as a small business. And so after that happened, I tried to get into advertising, but it was really hard because these small businesses, they don't have a lot of extra revenue to just spend on advertising. That was kind of my sweet spot, was being like, oh, this is organic. And so that's when it stopped being fun, because I really had to start selling myself on things that I hadn't really done before, like advertising. I hadn't done that as much, as I had a proven track record of growing businesses organically. So I did that for a while, and me and my partner, we started another company together, and we were using Shopify web shops to sell products online. And so with Shopify web shops, you have a template that they give you or that you can purchase, but you can also go in and edit the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so I started doing that. I accidentally stumbled upon the code, and I started changing the HTML and CSS and JavaScript and just playing around with it and trying to make the template more of like what we wanted and more unique. And I was like, this is really, really fun. I really enjoyed this. Like, I would sit for hours. Remember, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like changing it. Keep in mind, this is like production environment, because as you're changing, they don't have like a draft or anything. It's just like live. At least it was at the time. I don't know about now. So I was crashing the website because I think they used jQuery. I was like changing the JavaScript to try and understand, like, what is this doing? Because again, I'd never touched a programming language. And so I'm like changing what the JavaScript is doing, and the website is like down, and like customers can't even buy product. But at the time I was just like, this is so much fun. Like, why is it doing this? Like, why, if I change this variable name, does it not work? And so, yeah, I would just spend hours just playing around, trying to make the CSS do what I wanted it to do. And so that was like my first indication of maybe I am onto something here. Like, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy learning about it. And it reminded me of like a puzzle. Like, I really love doing puzzles, and that's what it reminded me of. The kind of issue was I was still in this mindset of, I want to be this businesswoman, and I want to, work with the degree I got. I mean, I spent so long getting this degree. It was a lot of money. I need to work in this career. And so at the time, even though I enjoyed it, didn't really connect in my mind that I should do programming or I should try to pursue that. And so in 2019, it was about a year later, we kept having our business, and I kept changing things. And eventually I did come to the conclusion that I do think computer science is something that I want to do, but I didn't realize that you didn't need a degree. At the time, I thought you need a degree, like self-taught. I didn't understand that that was even a thing. But also in 2019, I decided to move to Sweden. And this was the same month that the borders were being closed because of the pandemic. So a lot of things happened all at once. I was moving. I had made the decision to pursue programming. I had found a accelerated program at Lund University in the southern part of Sweden, and I was going to attend that program. But when I got to Sweden, this was again at the start of the pandemic, and so they canceled that program indefinitely. And so I was kind of like, okay, what do I do now? Again, I didn't understand self-taught being a concept. And so for work and to not be bored, I decided to do social media marketing again, even though I didn't really completely like it. I really enjoyed creating brand content, but the other parts of it wasn't as fun for me. But I knew how to do it. So I just started doing that again. And I worked with some local brands here in Sweden. And again, just in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really want to be a programmer, I think. Like, I really at least want to try to pursue that. And so I'm really thirsty. And so I made the decision to quit doing the marketing and pursue learning the basics of basically computer science and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I started with Python, and I learned Python really well. And then I moved on to Django as a backend framework. The issue with this that I later found out is that that is very much like a US tech stack. It's not so common here in Europe to use Python, Django, React. And so that had been what I was focusing on: Postgres, React, Python, Django. That was like the four main technologies that I'd been teaching myself. But I started building these different applications and projects, and I felt ready to start applying to jobs. And that's when I realized that it's not a popular tech stack here in Europe. So there wasn't that many roles. So I came across a job posting by a local bootcamp here in Stockholm, and I applied. It was essentially they were going to teach Java. And I applied, I went and interviewed, and I was accepted. And this bootcamp was like a 3-month bootcamp. And what is unique, I think, about this bootcamp compared to others is that you do the training and you sign a 1-year agreement with them, and they will place you at a company. And so then after that 1 year, you're no longer employed by them. You can be employed at the company that you were placed at. And so I went through the program and graduated. And then I did interviews with kind of various companies, and I interviewed with my manager. And I was placed at Scania. And so that's how I switched careers. I'm really happy with being a software engineer. I feel like it's much more suits my personality and just kind of how my brain works, I guess. And I think one of the things that I really enjoy about engineering is there's always something new to learn. I really enjoy learning. And there is this kind of like, even when you understand how something works, like you understand the browser and network calls and the HTML being rendered, it still seems like magic. Like, yes, you understand data packets, but it is crazy that data packets go through fiber and then they're just on your browser, and they're downloaded and rendered on your browser. I just find it magical, and I think I've never lost that sense of like, wow, this is so cool. It's what I really enjoy, and I really enjoy being able to create something that people want to use and that improves their life, and they just really enjoy using it. And so I'm really glad I made the decision to switch careers. So that's some lore about me and my kind of journey of self-discovery, I would say, and career switching, and why I enjoy being an engineer. I think one of the most important things for me is that I just accepted that I don't have to be someone I'm not. I don't have to be an extrovert. And actually now, when I've just accepted that I am introverted and that's okay, my life is much better for that. Like, I'm much more happy. I'm more successful, I would say. And you don't have to be someone you're not, especially if it's causing you harm. You should be yourself in every aspect of life, not just personality. So so that's my lore story of the day. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.